Hi again. Dan Alasso, making history. It is day 16 of my retrenchment odyssey, 265 to go. So the deans had their follow-up meeting yesterday afternoon after the rollout of their reorganization plan, and I went and mostly listened, since I think it's really something that the people who are remaining will have to work out amongst themselves and not me. I did throw in a couple of observations, and many of them were reiterating things that I had said in a really long department meeting that lasted nearly a couple hours that we had earlier in the day, our first department meeting of the season. I don't really feel it's my place, either in the department or in this bigger group, to tell my colleagues how they should try to organize themselves in my absence next year and going forward. Or in the department, what courses of mine they ought to let lapse and which ones they should try hard to continue. There may be some feedback from my students as the semesters progress, and if that's the case, I will pass that on, because I think it is important to understand and to deal with what it is that the students want. I mean, we should be focused on the market. The all-faculty meeting was kind of similar. I had a similar feeling about that. In some ways, I think it went a little better than might have been expected. There wasn't really a lot of acrimonious talk. I did see a lot of the other faculty who have been retrenched in the crowd, but nobody made a scene, and really I didn't see that many of the retrenched people kind of speaking up at all. The provost was in the room, but this time he didn't grab the mic. He kind of kept his mouth shut. He didn't say anything, and he let the deans run the discussion. The plan that the deans had outlined on Tuesday wasn't really designed to be the final plan. It was designed to be a conversation starter, and they hope that the faculty will actually put something together that finally gets adopted. I think that is probably the greatest strength, may also potentially be the greatest weakness of this plan. I was sitting roughly in the middle of this big room. It was a large lecture hall, and I was listening to 3 or 4 of the nearest of the small group breakout sessions that were happening on all sides of me. And in some of them, they were discussing kind of high-level issues like creating a timetable of milestones in this plan to develop the reorganization, and using a series of administration and faculty union meet and confer sessions to facilitate this. Other people seemed to almost immediately get stuck in the weeds on issues like, does the contract allow department heads rather than deans to evaluate faculty, since it's really the deans who are the supervisors of the faculty? So who gets to read and comment on all of the professional development plans and professional development reports that take up pretty much all of the dean's time right now? Beginning by fighting over details like that, I think, is a danger in actually being able to finally come up with a plan at all. So while I think there is a possibility that the university will be able to come up with something really innovative and potentially cool to reorganize themselves to meet the challenges of higher ed in the 21st century, they will definitely have their work cut out for them. I also want to switch gears this morning and comment on something else that I've been hearing during the startup week. There's been some talk that I would have to almost characterize as blaming about the challenges that BSU is facing right now with enrollment, and how we're losing students that ought to be ours. And the culprits, apparently, in some people's minds, are programs that allow high schoolers to earn college credits. As I mentioned a few days ago, there are several programs like this. There are AP classes in the high schools themselves and advanced placement tests. There are concurrent enrollment or college in the high school classes that I think actually do draw a bunch of people who might otherwise come to the campus and do PSEO classes with us. And then there are the PSEO classes themselves. And I want to explain that a little bit more because it is something that's kind of unique to Minnesota. So now I'm getting this all secondhand since I didn't attend the president's or the provost talks earlier in the week. But what I've heard is that PSEO especially was targeted as an example of these types of programs for high schoolers that are eating our lunch. And I wanted to respond to that. PSEO, as I mentioned before, but I'll expand a little bit, is the post-secondary enrollment option. And this is a Minnesota state-funded program that allows high school juniors and seniors to enroll in college courses. Typically, there's surveys that fill general education goals, but sometimes with permission, they can be upper-level electives, either in person or online. And the state of Minnesota pays their tuition and even actually pays for their books. This is a great deal for high school students. The students get a taste of the college experience. They get to come to campus. They get to interact in a classroom with other college students. They do maybe a little bit more and they do a little bit harder curriculum than they might get, maybe a little bit more comprehensive as well than what they might get in a high school class. And they earn credits that transfer anywhere in the Minnesota state system and in most cases transfer to other colleges and universities. The issue, according to the criticism that was apparently leveled by the administration, is that BSU only gets paid 80% of what we would get from an actual undergraduate, and that they're stealing seats from our real students. I've got a problem with both those objections. First, I don't see why we can't consider these students as incremental business, which we wouldn't otherwise get, and just be happy that we're in Minnesota, where the state offers this benefit that students in other places don't receive. Second, we don't build our courses or our course caps based on whether the students in the seats are undergrads or high schoolers. I have 14 PSEO students in my U.S. History 1 survey this fall semester out of a total of 54 students. The cap is 60. There are also 4 sophomores, 1 senior, and 35 first-year students. So there are 6 open seats. If BSU wants more undergraduates in this class, all they need to do is attract more people to enroll at Bemidji. The 14 high schoolers have not crowded out people who want to take this class and made it impossible. There is no waiting list. In any case, that would be a great problem to have. If there were 100 students who wanted to take this course, we could redesign the course a little bit and raise the cap a bit, or we could offer another section. I think there's also, in the backs of some people's minds, kind of a resentment against these PSEO students, which kind of shows up in the nearly complete lack of focus on PSEO students on campus. These high schoolers are basically not really welcome. They're tolerated, and they feel it. Is it because, although some of them do ultimately matriculate at BSU or at other Minnesota state institutions, most of them go on to other, more competitive schools? Some administrators seem to think that we're preparing these bright students to become overachievers at better universities. And I guess in a sense we are, but we're also getting the benefit of having them in our classes, contributing to discussions and improving the learning in the classes that benefits all the students. Every semester, some of the students with the highest final grades in my surveys are PSEO high schoolers. And we're getting paid for it. We're getting a chance to, at least temporarily, teach students who would otherwise just be going directly from high school to other different colleges and universities. And in any case, let's get over ourselves. The high school doesn't resent students who go on to college because they're not ending their educations with a high school diploma. Undergraduate programs, don't resent students who go on to graduate school. The idea that PSEO is taking something away from BSU that by right ought to be ours is misguided, and it's focusing people's attentions and energies away from the actual problems that confront us and finding the solutions. So that's all I've got to say about that. I hope people found that a little bit interesting. Thank you for following my odyssey here. If you want to follow every day, then subscribe and you'll get notifications when I post these things. And I will see you again